How's it going, everybody? Adrian Simple here from the Gaming Observer, and welcome to the Sunday Variety Show for March 10th, 2019. We're not going to follow that big of a structure than we usually do. I just basically wrote this script off the top of my mind, so it's a little different this time around. Regardless, thank you very much for tuning in here on YouTube, and consider subscribing while you're here to get even more content from me. Let's jump into this, shall we? I am now officially halfway through my second term of school, which means I'm only 4 or 5 weeks away from finishing my second year. This is crazy to think about. I feel like I just moved into my apartment like a month ago, but regardless, here we are. Unfortunately, what this also means is that things are getting pretty busy. When I wrote this script on Wednesday, I was panicking a little because of everything that needed to get done, but thankfully I was able to sort it all out and give myself a plan. It's especially tough when I desperately do not want to be in my program. The alternatives, though, are even worse for me than going to school, so perhaps I can actually start doing this full-time before the start of the next school year. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's very unlikely, but certainly at least a possibility. But the reason I bring it up, the real truth is, this is the first time I've really struggled with mental health. My entire life, I have been so incredibly blessed to never have to worry about it, and instead have been supporting those around me who struggle with serious anxiety and depression every day. These past few weeks have been a different story for me, which I'm still trying to figure out. And it's at this point that I need to say thank you to everyone who has ever tuned into the show, to everyone who has left a comment on my YouTube channel, or tweeted me, or left me a review on Amazon, donated on Patreon, really anything involving the Observer. Without this, and without you, I would be sitting in a program I hate with no viable alternative. And I would be in a much worse spot without the hundreds of people around the world who care about what I have to say. This has been such a cathartic journey so far, and I wouldn't have done it without you. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Okay, mushy-gushy emotions aside, I did do at least one fun thing this last week, which is go to a concert. Might be a band you've heard of before, they're called Disturbed. It was really a lot of fun. It's only been my second concert that I've gone to, but there was a lot to appreciate about it. Something I didn't know about Disturbed is that in between all of the screaming, they're huge mental health and addiction advocates. A lot of the time was dedicated to talking about it, and they even had like a separate little stage in the middle of the audience as sort of like a memorial to the fallen, and they performed a few ballads there. As a theater technician, there was also a lot of production elements to appreciate, though it wasn't nearly as pretty as when I saw A Perfect Circle. An amazing show, regardless, and hearing Down with the Sickness live was something I had no idea I wanted so badly. The entire building was off their feet rocking out to such an iconic song, and that's something I'll never forget. As for games that I played this week, I did indeed fulfill my promise to myself that I would start a single-player narrative game. I was lounging last Sunday with nothing to do, and was blissfully imagining myself with a Nintendo Switch, longing to have it for my daily commute, and was suddenly reminded that I owned a Nintendo DS. So with that, I have begun Pokemon White. This will be my third Pokemon game that I've played, after Diamond and Soul Silver, though I have yet to actually complete one. Hopefully this will be the first. So far it's pretty standard, though I am liking a lot of the animation improvements that they've made, as well as the efficiency in getting my first Pokemon and starting the game. I remember Diamond's taking forever. The Pokemon themselves are somewhat hit and miss though. I've been outright refusing to use some of them because I'm just not a fan. Like Pidove. Their new starting bird Pokemon is a mix of a pigeon and a dove, and they named it Pidove. I wasn't impressed with that one. Regardless, I've been enjoying it, and hopefully I can stick through it this time. Okay, we've got a comment/question from Roy here, who said on YouTube that he hates season passes and would like to get my thoughts on them. This was particularly on the briefing about the Dead or Alive 6 season pass, which was especially egregious with cosmetic items. Roy, in many cases, I agree with you. There are plenty of season passes and other bundles that should just be part of the base game. Things like cosmetics and skins can be very greedy depending on the situation, and they certainly used to be much better about it simply being a part of the game. In other cases, though, I see season passes as beneficial. If a developer knows that they will be making, let's say, 4 DLC packs that expand on the game past their initial launch, creating a season pass before those expansions arrive have a couple of benefits. For the consumer, they'll get a discounted rate if they already planned on buying all the DLC. For the developer, they get their money earlier, and they will also get more people buying the DLC. There's a ton of customers that might never return to the game after they complete the base game, or even just a month after it's released, which means that they would never buy the DLC. If they're presented with a season pass right off the bat, while their attention is still on the game, they're more likely to buy it. So in that way, where a developer can get some more money to do better things, I think it's a positive. In the case of DOA 6, though, it's incredulous. $90 for skins and a couple of characters is totally not worth your money, and absolutely should be included in the base game, or at least at a much cheaper price. Ben asks, what inspired me to start the Gaming Observer? So a bit of history here about the Observer. This will be an interesting one for some of you. I got the domain for TGO back in 2017. I wanted to get into writing, reporting news, and providing critical analysis about video games. And when I came up with the idea, I figured what the heck, may as well get the domain and go all out. Well, I tried, lost interest, and then never really returned to it for about 8 months. Then I was out with a friend one day for coffee. She's an entrepreneur, she sells jewelry, and she knew that I had tried to be a YouTuber at one point. I had lamented to her that if I had actually used the free time I once had when YouTube was really blowing up, I probably could have pulled it off. I then told her that I'm always trying to keep an eye on the newest platforms, the YouTube of today, so that I could be at the start of something huge like that. So we're at coffee, and one day she goes, hey, by the way, I heard of this thing on Alexa devices called Flash Briefings. They're 2 to 3 minutes of news and anyone can make them. And then my eyes bulged out of my head. Not only did I think the concept was brilliant, but it was perfect for me. I had a brand ready to go, a microphone that was in my closet waiting to be used since my YouTube days, and this content was relatively simple. No video capture, very little audio editing, comparatively simple script writing. Plus, I had wanted to go into radio once upon a time. So the stars basically aligned on that one. I ordered the Alexa the next day, and on July 15th, 2018, I created my first flash briefing. The only reason I kept going was because I got like 100 listeners in the first week, basically for my test run, which would have been unheard of on any other platform. So I knew I had a winner here. The rest is history from there, and hopefully we'll be looking back on this SVS the same way I look back on the first briefing I made. Kato Sepp asks what my favorite superhero is and why. This was an interesting one for me. I wasn't a huge superhero kid, but I certainly enjoyed them. Out of all of them, I probably have to say it's Spider-Man. I always loved his humor, his web-slinging, and the movies were a big part of my childhood as well. Nowadays, I haven't even seen most of the movies in the cinematic universe, so it's really hard for me to identify with any of those guys. I've also never been that big of a fan of people like Superman, Batman, Iron Man. So yeah, anyway, Spider-Man 2 on the original Xbox, played it way too much as a kid, and that hits a pretty big nostalgia bone for me. Okay, I think that's gonna be all for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. I think it's about time that I start rethinking this show and how I present it, so if you have any ideas of what you'd like to see in the SVS, I encourage you to reach out. Until then, I hope you have a wonderful week. And happy gaming, everyone.